are ready to start the next part of the evening, and there's coffee pots on the table, so if you want more coffee, feel free to help yourself. Paul had mentioned that he was thankful.
Turn the chairs.
Oh yeah, if you want to turn your chairs this way, you are free to do that. Then you can see when we have our guest speaker.
And if you don't want to see, just keep looking over that way.
Feel free to turn your chairs around.
Yeah, please just turn your chairs right around. That would be the nicest. Then you don't have to.
Can I turn mine around?
Well, yeah, you can.
For those of you who may not have been with us last time, I'm just going to do a little brief summary of what Paul and I do. We started a ministry called Arise Now about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago. And so we go to places and speak. We do our 2-minute wake-up calls, which are short little inspirational videos. They're on YouTube and on Facebook and on our website, arisenow.ca. And if you want to receive them by email, there's a sign-up list on the table here. We also have written some books. The books are here, so you can check that table out at the end if you would like to. I know a lot of you are familiar with the books and have gotten them when we did the free digital giveaways. And we do the radio as well. The last almost 3 years, we've been weekly guests on Minnie Moore's show, Arise Radio with Minnie and Friends in Brantford. That's been a great experience that has taught us just to open our mouths and speak, and it's been rather enlightening, an enlightening experience. So tonight Paul wants to share with you another healthy habit that he wants to speak on, and I'm going to invite you, Paul, to come forward and do that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Angie, and thank you to each one of you for coming and your interest in this event. I trust you've all been well fed, and I'm going to talk for approximately 20 minutes, and hopefully that gives the first course enough time just to settle in, and then we already have the dessert set out there for us. So please wait until I'm done to go get dessert. Although I guess if you really need to and you're fading away, well then. Help yourself. But I'm glad that tonight people aren't sitting quite as close, because last time afterwards, the next day at work, someone who will remain nameless says to me, Paul, after you started speaking, I had to turn my hearing aids down. And so I thought, well, no one has ever told me that they wish that I would talk louder. So we trust that everybody will be able to hear well, and we trust that this will be an encouraging time and a time for you to receive some inspiration on the journey of life that you are on as an individual. And that is the heart behind this. The heart behind what Angie and I do is really summed up in one word, and that is to encourage people. That is our heart, is we want to encourage people in their walk and in their journey as a follower of Jesus to pursue Him and to live a life that is faithful each and every day. So after we met the last time, when we got home, I was really energized, and so much so that I had trouble falling asleep. And as I as I was pondering that, as we were preparing for this event, I was thinking about how when you do what God is calling you to do, when you do the will of God, it energizes you. And my mind went to a story that is told in John chapter 4, where Jesus is talking with the Samaritan woman. And we're not going to give a lot of the details of that story, because those details aren't what I want to highlight here today. But so just real quickly, he meets this woman and he starts chatting with her. The disciples go off into town, and they come back sometime later, and Jesus is still talking to the woman. In fact, the woman has now gone into the town and it says the whole town came out to meet Jesus. Well, the disciples were very concerned about Jesus and thought he needs to have something to eat. They think he's going to fade away or something. And so they said, Master, can we get you something to eat? And Jesus says to them, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. And they're like, did somebody bring him some food? How did he get some food to eat? He's out here by himself talking to this woman. And then Jesus tells them what he means. He says, my food is to do the will of the Father, the one who sent me. and to finish his work. And as you and I live as followers of Jesus, and we live out the call of God that is on our lives as individuals, we receive that spiritual food in our lives. We receive that energizing force that comes when we follow God's call in our lives. In this room, there's several dozen of us here tonight, and each one of us has some specific gifts and talents that God has given to be used in service to bless others. There's things that you can do and in a way to bless others that only you can do in the unique way that God has gifted you. And so I want to encourage you that as we leave this place later tonight and in the coming days, that you just ask God, what is it, if you're not quite sure, what is it that I am gifted to do? And then as you have ideas come into your head, you begin to act on them. And then as you do, you will begin to experience what Jesus is talking about when he says, I have food to eat that you don't know not of. My food is to do the will of the Father, the one who sent me. And that is still the calling for those of us as followers of Jesus, that we are to do the will of the Father each and every day, using the gifts and talents that he has given us to bless others. So, I had this idea 3 months ago or so to have this gathering, and we responded in faith, stepping out and doing it. And so then when the first night went over pretty well and seemed to be a success, that really brought some spiritual food and energy into me. And so we carry on, and here we are tonight. But I just want to encourage you to be obedient and to follow the call and the destiny that God has for each one of you, because he's created us each with a specific purpose and with specific gifts that can be used to bless others. So be obedient, step out in faith, and use those gifts to serve others. So tonight, we are going to carry on this theme of healthy habits. And I should say that I'm going to ask Angie again to give me time reminders, like I get in the radio studio. When we're there, we do the taping segments in 20-minute segments. So our producer's sitting, there's 4 of us, Minnie and Angie and I, and the producer sitting around the recording studio, I guess we'll call it. And at 10 minutes, he goes like this, and at 5 minutes he goes like this, and then he goes 2 and 1, and then we start talking really fast because there's still a few things we want to say. And so we'll you can decide when the 20 minutes has started, but just give me the 10 and the 5, and I'll see how I'm doing with all of that. But I started off last time with this verse from Proverbs that it was a real encouragement to me, and Proverbs is written by Solomon, who is commonly known as the wisest man that has ever lived. And so if you want to learn wisdom, I encourage you to regularly pull out your Bible and read from the book of Proverbs. You don't even have to read a whole lot at one time to get great inspiration and to feel like you've, gained great wisdom. But he says in Proverbs chapter 4, starting in verse 20, he's speaking to his son, and he says, "My son, pay attention to my words. Listen closely to what I say. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them, and they bring health to a person's whole body." Isn't that awesome? To realize that the wisdom that Solomon is sharing with his son, he's telling him to keep it within his heart. Do not let them out of your sight. It's going to bring life to you. It's actually going to bring health to your whole body. And then he goes on to say this verse, which I didn't share last time, and I want to share tonight because it's key on what we're going to talk about. He says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for from it flow all the issues of life." Some translations will say, "For it is the wellspring of life." Guard your heart, for from it flow all the issues of life. So tonight we're going to talk, last time we talked about the habit of humility and how that benefits us to have a teachable spirit. If you remember, I shared that one definition that I really love of humility is the ability to make changes when confronted with the truth. So we're going to build on that tonight, and we're going to talk about another healthy habit. And tonight it's about honesty. Now, when I say the word honesty, I want you to tell me what's the first thing that comes to your mind. You can speak it out. What's one of the first things that comes to your mind when you hear the word honesty?
Truth.
Truth. Okay. What else?
Trust.
Trust. Integrity.
Faith.
Faith. Yes. Good. Anything else?
How hard it is sometimes.
How hard it is sometimes. Yes. Any other thoughts of the word about the word honesty?
Wisdom.
Wisdom. Yes. Okay. Some really good thoughts about honesty. So tonight, to give us the framework for this, I'm going to tell a story. Last time I told a story from the seat of my bus. One of my books is called Lessons Learned on the Seat of My Bus. Another one of my books is called Lessons Learned on the Seat of My Truck. So tonight, we're not in the bus seat, we're in the truck seat, okay? And so all the bus drivers, you can just go, okay. But you know, as I tell the story, you're probably going to make a lot of connections to our bus job, but but this lesson was learned on the seat of my truck. Right out of high school, I started at Herb Transport working on the dock. In 1983, I worked on the dock for 3.5 years. Angie and I got married in 1986, and I was working nights. She didn't really like being alone at home in the country and where we were living, so the only way at that point at Herb Transport to get a day job was to drive truck. And driving truck was never my lifelong aspiration, but I mean, I love to drive, and I thought, well, why not? Why not give it a try? So in 1987, March of 1987, I became a truck driver. And I just want to tell you that the beginning of my truck driving career was not that successful. I had a few incidences. Me and the overhangs of buildings seem to meet up kind of frequently. So in that first, say 6 to 8 months or so, I had backed into or collided with 3 different old buildings, overhangs. And that was not really the way that I wanted to start my career. And then also, so I started in March, and in December of 1987, just a few days before Christmas, I was driving one of the brand new trucks at Herbs. I was up in the Collingwood, Creemore area. I was going from Creemore to Collingwood, and I was on a narrow country road. It was a paved road with not much of a shoulder, and I got off the pavement, and the shoulder was like this wide, and next thing you know, I'm laying on my side in the ditch. And I was like, oh. Anyway, there's a whole lot more about that story in the book. I'm not going to get into a lot of details about that. But just to say this, to tell you the next step in the process was a meeting with my boss. And he told me that there's a problem here. There's a pattern. And history would show that somebody who has had this many frequent accidents, that it's not long before there's going to be a big doozy. And but he gave me another chance, but basically he said, if there's anything more that happens, I'm going to have to go back on the dock. Oh. What a depressing thought. You know, it's like the whole company would know that I failed. I'm back, like I was being taken back from driving back to working on the dock, and it felt hopeless. And I have a whole chapter in my book called One Day at a Time, how I learned to deal with living with that hanging over me, where one more mistake and I was going to be losing that job and be given a demotion. And I'm not going to go into a lot of the details of how I handled that, because we'll save that for another time. So I began this journey of living with the uncertainty of can I really drive a truck safely, and can I keep this job? And so we started to break the weeks down into days, the days into hours, and so the hours of safe driving soon translated into days, the days into weeks, the weeks into months. And the next thing you know, I had gone several years and I didn't have an accident. And I was like, wow, this is possible. I can do this. I can drive a truck without hitting anything. Fast forward, and I don't remember the exact amount of years from 1987 when I had that conversation to when this next incident happened that I'm going to tell you, but I think it was probably 6 or 7 years. At this time, I was delivering regularly in the city of London, and I was going there 5 days a week I was driving a straight truck on a pedal run, and so I was going into all kinds of different places each and every day, and some of them were rather tight. You know, we as bus drivers think some of our turns or things we do are tight. Well, truck drivers and being a delivery guy, it's quite a challenge sometimes. And so one day I had this new delivery to a bakery in London. I believe it was on Hamilton Road. I'd never been there before, so I stopped in front of the bakery and went in and surveyed talked to the person working there, and then went out and looked where I was to come in, and I was to drive in the alleyway, and then I could drive out the back. And so I did just that. I pulled up beside the bakery in the alleyway. I get out, and the lady, she's probably like 20 years old, who's working there, she's standing out at the front of the bakery looking at her car that's parked right in front of the store. And so I go out, what's the problem? She's like, you hit the bumper of my car when you turned in to come in the alleyway. And I'm like, well, I didn't feel anything. We didn't have cameras. But sure enough, there was a mark, and then I go and look at the back right rear dual on my truck, and sure enough, there was a mark on the sidewall of my tire that would match hitting the bumper of her car, and it had cracked the bumper. Well, in that moment, even though I had gone several years with driving safely, in that moment I made a decision. I need to take care of this on my own, and I'm not going to report it. Yeah. Oh. Now, if you're thinking ahead, you're thinking, well, you might realize the end of this story, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it, right? But let me just tell you what happened. In that moment, I decided I am going to take care of this. So I said to the girl, I said, I will take care of your repair, but you need to promise me you are not going to call my company. So this was long before the days of cell phones and whatnot, where you could easily get a hold of people. But I gave her my home phone number. We exchanged numbers. She called me, let me know how much it was going to cost. It was like $150 or something like that. And over the course of the next several weeks, all got taken care of. Her car got fixed, I paid her, and life went on, and nobody knew.
For now.
Yes, for now. So, at Herb Transport at the time, we had a safe driving program. We got a $300 bonus every year, that $25 a month. If you got the $300 bonus, you were invited to a dinner, a safe driving dinner every year if you had a safe year. And wouldn't you know it, the next year I got an invitation, and we had 5 minutes, wow, we got to talk fast. We had a conflict, and I couldn't go to the banquet, and I was like, well, I feel like that's okay. I didn't really want to go this year anyway. And life went on, and I was just, okay, it's all good. Over the course of the next number of months, every once in a while, this incident would come back to my mind. And I just kind of dismiss it, rebuke that thought. Get out of here, Get thee behind me, Satan. Like trying to be spiritual. It's just like, I don't want to think about that. But yet, it kept persisting. I talked with Angie, and we were just like, and I was like, I gotta come clean on this. I gotta make this right. So one day I'm driving, and I said to the Lord, well, if I get back and the boss is there, if his car's there, I'm going to go in and talk to him. Well, guess what? His car was there. His car was there. So I went in, and I just spilled it all out and told him, I said, I know I've gotten away with this, but it's weighing on me. I got to clear my conscience. And he was very gracious in that and understood. But in the end, I had to pay back my $300 safe driving bonus. Plus, I lost my safe driving pin. Plus, I had already paid for the repair. So this cost me a whole lot more the way that I chose to do it than if I would have done it the right way right from the start. But I share that to just highlight that, even in the midst of life, for someone like myself who was raised with values of honesty and truthfulness right from a young boy on up, I found myself in a situation where fear ruled my heart instead of faith, and I chose to respond in a dishonest way. And I know that if I wouldn't have came clean, no one would have ever found out, and years later here we would be, and this story would not be in my book, and I would not be talking about it today. But I would still have that weight in my heart. I would be carrying that around in my heart because it's like it's there. It's not meant to be there. Above all else, guard your heart, for from it flow all the issues of life. And whenever something that is dishonest, when we allow that into our lives and we hold on to it for a short time or a long time, it becomes an issue in our heart. And my desire for myself and for all of us here tonight is that we can live in a place where our hearts are free and our hearts are clear and our hearts are clean. So there's real quickly in the next 2 or maybe 3 minutes in the radio studio, there's not as much grace as maybe what there is here. But just want to give you a few quick thoughts. Somebody said that honesty is hard. I want to suggest to you, honesty takes a lot of courage. There's some times where it is not the easiest thing. Thomas Jefferson, I think, said a quote that many of you maybe have heard. Honesty is the first chapter in the book of wisdom. And another well-known person, the name slips my mind right now, says honesty is the best policy. But it doesn't mean it's easy. It takes courage. What was I lacking in that moment? I was lacking courage because I was letting fear dominate my heart. And I responded out of fear and I made the wrong decision. So sometime later it took courage to go and make it right. So it takes courage. Honesty brings a cleansing to us. I heard this quote, listen to this. If you tell the truth, it becomes part of your past. If you tell a lie, it becomes part of your future. Did you hear that? If you tell the truth, it becomes part of your past. You don't have to carry it with you. If you tell a lie, it becomes part of your future because now, what did I say? Maybe I might have to, I said the wrong thing. It doesn't line up with what I said before. You understand the complication? So honesty brings a cleansing and a cleanness to our hearts. When I came clean and was honest before my boss, as hard as that was, it's like, I don't care what that cost me in dollars. There's no price that could be paid on unloading that off of my conscience. Because honesty is always worth it no matter what it costs us. So it takes courage, it provides a cleansing. It also provides a covering. There's a verse in Ephesians chapter 6 where the Apostle Paul is writing and he describes for followers of Jesus what is our spiritual armor. And the one item I want to highlight here tonight is that he talks about the belt of truth. Well, what does a belt do? It keeps everything in place. And what happens if you don't have a belt? Well, there's a good chance something is going to be exposed. No, wipe that, please. Wipe that mental image from your mind. But honesty provides a covering. It keeps us from being exposed. Another quote. Honesty is the first step in keeping a mistake from becoming a failure. It's the covering. It keeps us from being exposed. The belt of truth, part of our spiritual armor. And the last thing I want to highlight about honesty comes from a verse from Psalm 25, verse 21. it says this, let integrity and uprightness preserve me. Now when if you noticed, I always like my points to start with the same letter. So we had courage, we had cleansing, we had covering. And I was thinking, what's a C word that talks about preserving? Well, honesty is like canning. What do you do when you can? You're preserving something for later use, right? And so honesty is a preserving of us. Let integrity and uprightness preserve me. Integrity is that we are consistent in all of life. It's not like I'm this kind of person here and I'm another kind of person here, and all of a sudden I need to remember where I am so I know how to act. No, integrity is that we act and we are genuinely who we are through and through in every situation. Whether we are alone or whether we're in a crowd. We don't change because we're full of integrity. And that's being honest and truthful. And there's a preserving. Uprightness is making the right choices. And so that is my desire and my passion in sharing that with you tonight. That we can live a life that is full of integrity, that is full of honesty in every situation, no matter how difficult. That we can have the courage to do it. We can realize the cleansing that comes with it. We can be covered with the belt of truth around us, and let integrity and uprightness preserve me so we can be well canned. And moving forward, we can see what that verse means where it says integrity and uprightness will preserve us. That's who we're called to be as followers of Jesus. And that is a healthy habit. What is a habit? It's something that by regular use just becomes natural for how we do things. So let honesty flow out of us in each and every situation, no matter how difficult we find the situation to be. And we will be blessed in ways that we cannot imagine. All right. Well, that's all for tonight. As we say at the end of our videos, until next time, stay awake and stay alert.